2018. We need no roll call, but we need to vote on, we just need excuse her. All right.
You don't need to.
Vice Mayor Campbell will not be here. So let's go down to, we have 3 items on the agenda. Again, council refrain from asking questions until the staff presentations are complete. And our first item, presentation regarding emergency fire access standards in Goodyear and other municipalities. We have, all right, you are here, Christopher Baker, Development Services, Director Randy Westacott, Chief Building Official, and Brian Dool, Battalion Chief, will present. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present this topic about secondary emergency fire access with you. This was a council requested work session from November of 2017, and we're delighted to be able to have this conversation with you today. As you mentioned, Mayor, co-presenters tonight is Randy Westacott. He's our Chief Building Official, and Brian Dool, our Battalion Chief, works with operations and fire prevention. So tonight, we're going to be seeking some policy direction in regards to secondary emergency fire access. But before we do that, we're going to touch base, and before we ask you this policy question, we're just going to run through rather briefly and talk about the process that we utilize to review projects when they come through the development continuum. We're going to present to you the history of these particular code requirements, what the City of Goodyear standards are. Finally, we're going to wrap it up by providing you a staff recommendation, and then, as always, we like to present council some options for consideration. So with that, just as a refresher, this has to do with the process. So when projects come into the development continuum for review and approval, the Development Services Department collaborates with many of our internal and external partners, including fire, of course, building safety, and our colleagues in engineering. And we specifically look at, with these 3 particular departments, the layouts of projects with regard to travel lane, how wide are the travel lanes, can emergency vehicles utilize the roadway infrastructure, the turning radii to ensure that large vehicles can make appropriate turning movements without hopping curbs and damaging property and the equipment, as well as the construction materials to make sure they can support 75,000 pounds adequately. We also look at any kind of access limiting devices that are proposed, such as locks, chains, gates, preemption gates, or other type of access limiting devices that are proposed. So all of us collaborate on all of these and review them during the normal course of business.
The emergency fire access requirement does come from the fire code, and it is based on a life safety requirement, and it really looks at the risk to life as far as access to a site. And so there are certain triggers that require a secondary fire access. One of those would be a residential community that has greater than 30 home sites, and the other would be a commercial project that has over 62,000 square foot of commercial space. And so, as I said, it comes from the fire code. It is for emergency access only. It's a secondary access that's designed to be there should we have an event that takes out the primary access. We have a secondary access point. And at that time, when we're using a secondary fire access, we would have traffic control related to that. And it's not for public access.
These gates can be swinging or sliding. We work together to determine what kind of gates this would be appropriate for the area. These are one-person operations, and again, they're not as time-sensitive as their initial access. This is a secondary access for when the initial access is blocked or when we need to get other apparatus in, and it's a one-person operation. They're able to unlock or maneuver through this access. These things can be swinging or sliding. Again, it's a one-person operation. If there's any kind of chain, we work together with the building official to determine how this is most appropriate for the area, and it'll be signed, and we will. It's a one person. Like if it's chained, we'll be able to access it with with the bolt cutters. If it is electric, it'll have a preemption device. It's a series of strobe lights that we use on the fire truck that gives us access into these areas. And then they have a secondary key access that we have on the fire trucks.
As Brian kind of touched on there, there's essentially three different styles of emergency, can't get that word out,
That's because you're in the room with the mayor. I'm sorry, it's like measles.
Okay.
Go ahead, don't worry about it.
So anyway, the secondary fire access points, there's basically three styles, as Brian pointed out. There is the electric gate, which would be required to have a preemption device. There is a manual gate, and then there's what we call a drape chain. All three styles are acceptable. All three styles do meet the minimum code requirement. As Christopher pointed out a little bit earlier, they are designed to meet 75,000 pounds in all weather conditions. One thing that's important to note about a secondary access is that it's not designed for daily use, and it also doesn't have to be designed to meet with our engineering design standards as far as traffic flow and everything. Say on an arterial street, we wouldn't need a deceleration lane because, again, if we are using that, we're going to be controlling the traffic at that point, and we'll be taking care of the traffic situation in the area.
All these access points are maintained by the homeowners association, and it is their responsibility to maintain these things.
And then here you can see we've put together a quick comparison of some of our benchmark cities. And, excuse me, the drape chain is about a 50-50. Manual gate you can see is allowed in almost all of the benchmark cities. And then preemption of the electric gates are allowed in all of the jurisdictions.
So, thank you, Randy. Excuse me, Mayor, Council. So we've got a little frog in my throat. I'm sorry for that. So based on the existing code requirements, which does allow the drape chains, manual and electric gates, and how we collaborate as an internal team in reviewing projects, and our staff recommendation is fundamentally to follow what the International Fire Code allows, which does allow chains, gates, and electric swinging electric gates as well. And because that provides the greatest amount of flexibility for us to work with customers, while at the same time placing public safety as the preeminent focus of our effort. But different customers may, because of the uniqueness of a particular property, propose something different, and it allows us to work with them to find an appropriate solution. Oh. So based on that, we recommend just continuing to utilize our current practice, which is following the current International Fire Code. So as I said, we also want to provide council a couple of options or several options to consider. The first option we identified is follow the International Fire Code, which is the staff recommendation. That is our current practice. That's how we currently operate. And with that, it also ensures that the HOA and the owners have that ongoing maintenance responsibility. We also feel, from a staff perspective, that following the fire code does allow ease of entry for these secondary emergency access points. So that's the first option. The second option is to require preemption so you would have electrified gate, not electrified like shock you, but electric gates with the preemption devices. There was a cost implication associated with that, and we did some due diligence and estimated that to be between $6,000 and $15,000. There's ongoing homeowners association or owner maintenance associated with that, and the pro associated with this one is that the fire truck would pull up, activate the light system, and the gate would open. The third option is to just leave the secondary fire access gates open. In that particular case, the access points would need to be designed to meet all of the public access engineering requirements, and the road would need to be improved because we wouldn't be able to stop the public from utilizing these access points on a regular basis. Obviously, there's an increased cost associated with that, but since it is open, it would be easy to go in and out of at that point with leaving it open instead of having a secure gate. So those are the three options that we have identified for council, and those are what we'd like to now toss it back to you, Mayor, if we may, and get some policy direction.
Great. Who would like to talk first? Don't rush to it this night, all right? Brandon?
I just had a quick general question about the mechanics of the electric gates. Can they be operated if there is no power? Can you manually slide it?
The electric gates are supposed to have a battery backup, and they're supposed to be able to be overridden with a key that we have on the truck.
Okay, I figured there had to be, but I didn't know. So thank you. Yeah, and I'm okay with the following what we're doing currently. I think the original reason this was brought up was to make sure the firefighters didn't get hit by a vehicle. I believe that was the main concern when it was brought up, that if you're there, that a car coming the other direction you guys would be safe as the guys hopping out of the vehicle. But it sounds like you guys are okay with that. So
Thank you.
So yeah.
Sherry?
Now, we have different, well, let me rephrase that. These aren't seen in every single community, right?
Correct.
So it's usually, we've seen them in the one way in, one way out communities.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Yeah, I'm okay with having the variety, because that extra cost to force to add on may be too much for some of these areas, especially if they don't have a homeowners association. So I do like having the variety, and then you would work with the fire department for each individual community to determine which is the best, whether the gate's better or how to get people in their best.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Yeah, I think I'd like to leave the discretion to you all to figure out what is best as you review the plans.
Lauren?
So the communities that don't use the drape chains, do you know what their rationale is for not using them? Are they a liability of some type, or just maybe unattractive? I don't know. Is there any thought about why they wouldn't be acceptable?
I think that would be really up to the community on what level of appearance they wanted on their secondary access.
Okay.
We really don't have any statistics on why they choose to do something other than a drape chain.
Okay. Well, I support what the International Fire Code standards are. I know they're pretty stringent.
Joe?
Well, I'm the one who brought this up, and the reason why is for a community, we're in the forever business. What we build is what you see, and to be honest with you, the drape chains, especially when they're facing main roads, to me, I just don't like them. I know they meet the code, but to see a drape chain across one of the entrances as opposed to one of the other two, even though I know all three of them for our community, I think kind of detracts from the community. But that's my own personal opinion. That's why I brought it up, to see if there was any, to try to upgrade that a little bit, and just instead of having a chain draped across an entranceway for those trucks to get in, because somebody still has to get out, unlock it, I guess, and do it, as opposed to the gates that may have a button on the truck which will open it up for them to go through. But to me, it was more aesthetics than it was anything else. It wasn't a safety issue. It was the look of that chain draped across an entrance that just, I thought was, from a parent standpoint, not up to the standards that I thought we should have. So, and that's the only reason why I brought it up.
Bill?
I'm fine with the current practice that we have. The manual gate, does that include a swinging triangle arm?
There could be a swinging triangle arm. It also could be a side rolling gate.
There it is.
So, yes.
Yeah, I mean, while I agree with Joe on the aesthetic appeal of it, if as a council we downgraded the appearance of our traffic signals because we didn't want to spend the extra money, I'm okay with leaving this the way that it is.
I guess I'm the only one who hasn't told. I like the gates. All right, I do. I like the looks of them. So I guess we have to kind of weigh that out, the worth of it. But just the chain hanging down there, I think invites more people to go under that chain and go around that chain. You know what I mean? It just says, well, you can get in there easily. It just opens up like it's not really protected. But then on the other hand, I live at Pebble Creek, and the gates are breaking down all the time. It is amazing. And so that's another issue, is how long that gate will last. So I'm kind of in between. I always fashion ourselves similar to Gilbert. You know, when they get something, then we get it next. And so I see that they have a variety of them, and they use the gates. And so, yeah, Sharon, go ahead.
And maybe on that note, with that, as it goes through planning, maybe if it does face a major street or something, that's something that they can take into consideration.
I like that
aesthetics as
idea.
part of it.
Yeah.
And then if it's maybe facing, you know, a because some of these face like canals and
Right.
that aren't aesthetics, and maybe take that as in consideration.
I think then we should just be able to consider any of them, depending on the area and the need. We aren't voting, so I'm just looking at them, okay? Just kind of getting a hint here.
So,
Any more discussion on this? Any questions? Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
I was going to say, Mayor, what I've heard is that there's support for our current practice.
Can we do what Councilmember Loretano suggested? Do you guys have the authority to say this does not meet the design guidelines?
I think we would need a ordinance change in order to support that, because right now we allow all these different manner of access limitations. So if we want to regulate it from just purely an aesthetic look, then I believe that we should revise our design standards.
That's a design standard issue.
Right.
I would be in support of that, not allowing it on to and there's a difference between a side street and a
Correct.
major thoroughfare, and I think that's kind of what we're driving toward. And if it's a matter of making a design standard change, I would be in support of that.
Mayor, we've already done that, if I'm not mistaken. The new development that's going in on Pebble Creek Parkway with those homes, we did, at least I made that recommendation on a stipulation, which was adopted by the rest of the council, that we actually have the gate there, or so.
Right.
It does get done, but usually have to do an additional step to do that. But I would be in support of what you just mentioned too, if it's on a major thoroughfare, and then let it slide a little more if it's inside, not following a major street. But we always have that option to stip it when it comes before us, so.
Trevor, you'd like to comment on that?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, council, what I would recommend, if this is the desire of the council, is that we actually do the design standard change. That way we're communicating clearly with our customers, as opposed to,
Okay.
I'm going to say, having a stipulation late in the game, if you will,
All right.
that may cause some heartburn. We'd rather communicate with them clearly up front.
We would rather not have the heartburn. Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point too, I mean, if like that triangle gate could be dressed up nicer than it is, I don't know if they all have to be electric gates as opposed to just a nicer looking manual gate, essentially. So, just a comment. So.
Okay. So you have the message from the council?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to adjourn this meeting. We're going to the dais and start our regular meeting. So this meeting is adjourned.